Sports on the HAN Network, Tuesday, June 12th. Frank Granito in studio alongside Kevin Coleman as we continue wrapping up the 2017-2018 sports year. We've got Game Time CT's top 10 polls out in baseball and boys lacrosse so far. We can talk a little bit about some breaking news out of Wilton, and we'll get you ready. We've got a couple Connecticut natives competing in the U.S. Open this week, so finally we get to take a turn towards golf. You know that's my favorite, obviously. But I want to start with the top 10 boys lacrosse here. Let's continue off of that interview we had with Coach Colsey yesterday. Ridgefield gets the top spot, 6 of the possible 11 votes. I don't think we're going to have any dispute over Ridgefield being number 1. You dethrone Darien, you take home the Class L championship, absolutely where they belong.
Well, let me ask you this. Is Coach Colsey hanging out with Tiger Woods out in the Hamptons right now? They celebrating out there?
Oh, my God. You and your tank.
No, Ridgefield's sitting at 1. Well-deserved. I mean, the Class L champions. This is a great spot for Ridgefield. Darien sitting number 2. New Fairfield at 3. New Canaan at 4. They get into the top 4. New Canaan, you know, we talk about all week, and even during the FCAC postseason when they fell to Darien in the championship game, and then during the state tournament, this is a team that, you know, going into the season, not a lot of question marks, but we're wondering where are they going to finish up. And they really impressed me this year. Carl Mazabris was absolutely incredible in net. I think they're going to come back next year and be a powerhouse. They're going to be a team that I think will finish in the top 3 when you look from a year from now.
The FCAC gets 4 of the top 5 spots. They put 5 total teams into the top 10. Darien is second. They get 3 overall votes. New Canaan at 4 and Wilton at 5. The team at number 3, New Fairfield, 22-0. They defeat Daniel Hand 13-11 for the Class M championship. I'm okay with them being at 3. You're a state champion. You're undefeated. They received 2 first-place votes.
I'm okay with it too. I'm okay with them being the top 3. I'm not okay with them being 1. I'm okay.
I don't understand who would have voted them 1.
Right.
And I respect that. Okay, they're undefeated, the only team in the state that didn't lose a game this year. But at some point, you have to consider the level of competition.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, we're not biased or anything, but the FCAC is just so much better in
It's
some
not
ways.
even just the FCAC, the SCC. I don't think they would have been able to compete with Fairfield Prep.
Yep.
I mean, it's.
I think the FCAC and the SCC, they would have had a tough time. And New Fairfield still, I mean, winning the Class M championship, yes, they didn't have to face New Canaan this year, which is, I think that would have been interesting to see if, you know, if New Canaan was still an M and they had to face off against each other. But New Fairfield, 22-0, a great season. I agree. Not number 1 for me. Top 3, absolutely.
New Canaan at 4, I think they're in the right spot there. They were the 3rd best team. You could argue, I mean, they had they had Darien on the ropes 3 times this year. 3 games, they lose by a combined 4 goals to Darien. They did beat Ridgefield in their only meeting with the Tigers, so I agree they should be right at 4. Wilton is an interesting one to me. Right at 5 there. You lose to Darien in the quarterfinals and in the semifinals. I could go either way, actually, 5-6 with Wilton and Glastonbury, especially Glastonbury having the eventual state champion on the ropes in the semifinals.
Yeah, I agree with that too, Frank, because of how Glastonbury got to that quick 5-0 lead against Ridgefield in the state semifinals. I think Glastonbury and Wilton, I would have loved to see them play against each other because that's where you would have seen which team was better, who's coming out in the winning end. Wilton, despite having a tough May and end of April, they came out of it strong, and they made the FCAC postseason, made the state tournament. They were a strong team this year.
They had a strong finish to the year.
Yeah.
And it's really just their finish. I think they're getting a little too much credit for a 1-goal loss to Darien. Don't forget, a week and a half earlier, they lost by 14.
Yeah. I mean, they got smoked by Ridgefield too.
They did not play well against the top 10. You know, if you look at the other teams this year. They had a good run against New Canaan. Really, it was actually, they had a close game with New Canaan at the start of the year, but that was a game they should have won. You let New Canaan score 4 goals late, and you blow a lead there. I think Wilton obviously should have been a team in the top 5, but I wouldn't have been surprised or upset if Glastonbury's ahead of them because of the overall work. And I think you're looking at this and, okay, we've got your most recent game in mind, but the final power rankings should be with the overall body of work being considered in a large part.
I agree with that, and that's why, yeah, a strong finish by Wilton, but it was the beginning part of the season that they didn't struggle, but a couple bad losses. And you look at the stat sheet, they lost by, more than it was. They were losing by 10.
There were a couple of bad.
Yeah,
and the losses that they have, they're against the top teams.
Yeah, and like you go back to when we covered them against Ridgefield. They just got outplayed simply in that game, especially in the second half. The Ridgefield defense was great, especially against Connor Drake. But I think that you look at Wilton, strong finish, but you look at that month of April and a little bit of May, the early part of May, where they just seem to not struggle, but just have a little bit of a hard time.
There's going to be a lot of eyes on this Wilton program over the next 12 months here, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second because there's some developing news there. Fairfield Prep at 7. They're the SEC champion. They lose to New Canaan. They split the series with New Canaan on the year. I'm okay with the Jesuits sitting right there. It was a very good year for them, and they should be in the middle of the pack there. Daniel Hand losing in the Class M final now for the 4th straight season. You feel for them. They should be there. Newtown at 9 is a good spot. The 10 one, though, I'm a little upset with, and it's purely, I don't think it should have been Staples. It's a team, finds itself right in the middle of the pack in the FCAC. First round losses in the FCAC tournament, a tough loss in overtime against Fairfield Prep. I would have gone St. Joe's here. They also lost in that FCAC tournament, but they win their state class. I know it's not the same, but they're a state champion.
Yeah, and St. Joe's, look at the season they had compared to last year.
Yeah.
And they've come a long way. They're trending in the right direction. They got a lacrosse program now at St. Joseph High School where it's trending. And you have young players coming into St. Joseph's where they want to play lacrosse. They want to buy into this program. And you had a great slew of seniors this year. Jared Malazzi had that great game-winning goal against Fairfield Ludlow. Remember that game we covered? That team really impressed me this year. And I would have liked to see them in the top 10 as well.
Same number of losses as Staples overall in the season. So I think that not enough credit given to St. Joe's for winning their class. And again, it's similar to New Canaan in the past years being knocked, and I'm one of those people who would absolutely knock them for winning their state class, but they don't choose what class they're in. They go out there, they win. We talked about some big developments happening in Wilton. Coach John Wiseman announcing that he is stepping down as the head coach. Before we talk about where this leaves the program, let's just say one of the greatest qualities of Coach Wiseman was not in the way he developed them as lacrosse players, but as young men. You can remember on the FCAC tour when we talked with the Wilton captains, they all preached, we're going about this as it's a profession. We're handling this in the most professional manner. We're being good people first. We're doing everything the right way, and our play will let itself take care of it. He was an alumni of Wilton High, just the 3rd coach in history, and over the last 10 years, he had won 2 state titles and was a runner-up in another year as well.
It's disappointing, Frank, because this is a lacrosse program at Wilton High School that's trending in the right direction. They're moving towards, not being that team on the outside looking in from that top 3. They're looking to push and beat the New Canaans, beat the Darians, beat the Richfields. And I think Wiseman had that message. He was bringing the youth program to Wilton, Connecticut. Young players were buying into it, and you were starting to see it develop. And you're right about how he not only handled his players on the field, but off, how they handle themselves. And that's a reflection on the coach. I 100% agree with you, how they handle themselves like young men, professional, said all the right things, always polite, always professional, and that's what you want out of student athletes.
And it was a coach who really did take care of his own as well. The players who went through that program, he gave his seniors the opportunity and the chance to earn starting positions first. If you put your time in, you were going to be given the chance to play, and I think that's something that really needs to be, it's not as respected as much as it should be at the high school level. You think back a couple of years ago, and I'll go with Duquesne and Darien football. They had a 3-year run where the same classes all got their starts as sophomores and really built themselves up over 3 years. And it almost became like a college-type dynasty. I think the beauty of high school sports comes in the waves that come each year. It's a senior class that has the opportunity to set their legacy. And so Coach Wiseman really did believe in you put your time in and you would have that opportunity to play. Early thoughts right now, his right-hand man, Steve Pearsall, is the likely replacement there, but the athletic director, Chris McDougall, still going to search all options for that position. But it's a Wilton coach stepping down that does not appear to be any relation to parent pressure, just where he's at in his life. He wants to make sure that that position is held by someone who can give their full attention to the job, and he's just got other things coming up right now at this point in life that he doesn't want the boys or the team to suffer from.
Right, and you had to respect that part of it, but I know it's going to be a big hit for this lacrosse program and for the town of Wilton. We hope that Coach Wiseman, we get to see him again. Hopefully, maybe down the road he comes back to Wilton. But again, that's a tough loss. I hope whoever replaces him brings that same sort of message to Wilton High School for the boys lacrosse program.
They will be just the 4th coach in program history, and it will come at a very crucial moment for this program as they head into the 2019 season. We're going to take a break on Nutmeg Sports. When we get back, Mike Suppy will join us. He's one of the voters in Game Time's baseball poll, and he will talk about his thoughts on the final top 10 ranking. That's next on the HN Network.
At Pamby Motors, we're not worried about being the biggest dealership. We're focused on being the best. We're dedicated to giving you the best experience we can. The Pamby Motors team is here to help you choose the right Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, or Ram in a friendly, pressure-free environment. And right now, during Ram Truck Month, get up to $14,000 off on all in-stock 2017 Ram 1500 pickups. Come in and see us for details. Visit Pamby Motors, Route 7 in Ridgefield, PambyZone.com.
UK Gourmet is the largest specialty grocer in the area, featuring food from England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. Over 80 teas to choose from and a brilliant assortment of biscuits to go with them. Over 70 cheeses from grass-fed cows, which makes a smashing difference in taste. The creamiest chocolate you'll ever taste using no artificial colors or preservatives. So say hooray for UK Gourmet, 78 Stony Hill Road in Bethel, or visit ukgourmet.us.
Voted Best Gourmet to Go in Fairfield County, Palmer's extensive menu offers everything you'll need to make your next event easy and delicious. Whether you're hosting a small get-together or planning a large celebration, they've got you covered breakfast through dessert. Order online at palmersdarien.com or call 203-655-2077.
Back on Nutmeg Sports on the HA Network, Frank Granito alongside Kevin Coleman. Happy to welcome in Mike Suppy now, a director for the HA Network, also a poll voter for Game Time CT. The final 10 is in for baseball. No surprises here, Mike. Cheshire #1, they take home the double L title, and I don't think we're going to have any debate over where they finish in this poll.
No, it was unanimous. They were the best team in the state tournament. They took care of business. They took a lot of scalps in winning that tournament, and it's well-deserved by Cheshire to take home that title. It's their first one in a long time. They're always a relatively strong baseball program, but this year, they got their first one in, I think, over 20 years for states.
Yeah, 25 years.
Yeah, big win for the Rams, and I agreed. You win double L, you're going to finish #1 in the polls. All right, I know the three of us have got a little bit of disagreement here now in the 2-3 section here. Fairfield Prep finishes number 2 with 290 points. Ridgefield at 3 with 288. I'll start it off, and I will say I agree that even though Ridgefield was the state runner-up, Prep should be number 2, and it goes back to that overall body of work. Only 2 losses on the year, one of them against Trumbull, and I'm still trying to find out if that was a Ben Farrow Trumbull start. And then you lose in the semis against the eventual state champion in extra innings. They won their conference. I think the Ridgefield FCAC loss versus Ludlow is the difference in 2 or 3.
Yeah, that really hurt them, and the 6 losses too hurt them. And they had a really tough. They didn't play well to finish off the season. Last couple games of the regular season, they just didn't look like themselves. And you mentioned that tough loss against Fairfield Ludlow in the quarterfinals of FCAC. So I think that caught everyone by surprise. So while obviously I'm gonna want Ridgefield to be number 2, but yes, Fairfield Prep with only 2 losses, winning their conference and everything, they deserve to be number 2. But Ridgefield, for the way that they lost in FCX, for them to respond and get to be a state runner-up, I think that deserves to be I give them so much credit for doing that.
And there's no way you can drop them below 3, Mike, when you think about they were the regular season champion in the FCAC and the run they had in states. They were the team that knocked Amity out of the tournament before the championship for the first time in 5 years. You lose 1-0 in the championship against Cheshire. You could really go either way on it, and I just think overall body is why I lean towards Prep.
Yeah, and that's a fair point. You raised some good points. I actually had Ridgefield 2 in my poll and Prep 3. And I leaned towards the fact that Ridgefield beat Amity, Newtown, and Hamden in the state tournament, and they went around farther than Prep. And to me, that weighed in a little more than, a couple more losses overall. But you also raised a good point that Prep was the number 1 seed, so they had, guaranteed themselves a slightly easier path. But again, I mean, you can't go wrong really either way there. Yeah. I had him, Ridgefield 2, Prep 3. Easy, like you said, it could have been Prep had a claim for number 2, and obviously the other voters saw that the other way. But I'm still sticking with, Ridgefield getting around further and who they knocked off in the tournament, to me, covered over the fact that they lost in the first round of FCX and had a few more losses on the season than Prep did.
Yeah, and again, we're also, you're talking about 2 teams here. Really, the top 3 teams, it's a couple bounces of the ball that separates all of them from that claim as the Class LL champion. When you think about the final games between Cheshire and Ridgefield and Cheshire and Prep, Cheshire's obviously number 1. You're right. 2, 3, you could go either way, and it's just a preference of opinion there.
Right, and that just the way they beat Ridgefield too. A great pitching performance, 1-0 win. I like that. That 100% deserves them to be number 1. And Staples being the only other FCAC team that finishes 10.
At 4, Wethersfield, they win Class L handedly. I'm very okay with that spot right there. They took down Windsor, who's number 5. I think Windsor's a little too high after that loss. I would have gone Seymour most likely. I possibly would have gone Amity as well over Windsor there. They were really high on them all year, but Mike, and this is my opinion, I think that Windsor is a team that the writers sometimes are a little too high on, and that's in multiple sports. It's a lot of what have you done for me lately, and there aren't a lot of championships right now backing up some of these Windsor voting. But that's me.
I voted. I was in line with the rest of the voters on this one. I had Wethersfield 4, and Windsor 5. I mean, that's probably a product of you not seeing any of the teams in the CCC play. It's a great conference. Those guys are, those teams are big rivals. And sometimes in the state tournament and the championship games, you see a lot of those lopsided games. I'm not going to ding them for having a strong body of work for losing to a league rival in the final by a big score like that. And Wethersfield was a team that was kind of a little inconsistent this year, but they pulled it together in time to get this Class L title, which is, a good achievement for them up there.
Absolutely, and you are right. It's the downside of the 1-game playoff. Baseball, if there was a sport in Connecticut that you needed it, best of 3 to say the least, this is the one where you got to go that way. And to that point, Mike, I think that you talk about the CCC, how well they were this year. The SEC again proving to be the best conference, I think, in the state of Connecticut for baseball. Amity obviously should be in the top 10. The fact that they reached only the semifinals, and that's a disappointing season, says everything you need to know about that program. South Windsor had a very good year. We could talk about Notre Dame of Fairfield in a second, but at 10, Staples getting the last spot in the top 10, I don't agree with that one. I think they're getting a little too much credit for being last year's champion. They were the FCAC runner-up in a year where the conference really was down across the board. 12 FCAC teams made the state tournament this year. 9 of them lost in the first day of Double L. So Staples at 10 is probably the one where I'm really like, get them out.
Yeah, I didn't have them in my final 15, to be quite honest. I just didn't think the body of work was good enough the entire season for Staples. I think this was a year that they were going to reload, and for them to, convince enough riders to get them into the top 10 there, 10 this season is a great accomplishment for them, because their season that they're going to be circling is going to be next year when they have all these guys back as seniors. But again, I didn't have them in my final 15. I had some team, I had Darien in there at 14, just on the basis of they won. I know they lost in the first round of the state tournament, but I tend to give curry a little favor to teams that win their conference tournament, and that's why I put Darien in my final poll, and also Holy Cross, who won the NVL, who I had at 15, and then I had a couple SEC teams that had strong years, and North Haven and Hand up in there too, that I thought were more deserving of being in that final spot in the top 10 there than Staples might have been. Again, I saw Staples play a few times this year. They're a good team, but I just don't think they were one of the 10 best teams in the state this season.
I totally agree, and I think you made a really good point. They're a year away, and I do think they have a lot of big-name players that were on last year's group and maybe just getting a little too much credit as the defending state champion. But they're a team to look out for next year. And, something else to consider as well in that Darien point you made, you're right. I think you do deserve credit for winning your league title. For Darien, it's a tough draw having Danbury waiting for them in the first round of states. I think having to play one of those conference opponents was a difficult task there for them.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you look at this, I think Darien should be in that 10 spot rather than Staples, if you're looking at it that way. Because, Staples didn't win their conference. They didn't win the states. And I think you look at Darien, a great season for them. They have some young talent as well. And I agree, Staples brings back a lot of talent next year where they can maybe have a little chip on their shoulder and make another run at it in FCX and states. But for me, Darien, I think, should have been ranked higher than Staples.
That's fair. Mike, number 9, you had Notre Dame of Fairfield. They won the Class S championship. Is it time for us to seriously consider moving Notre Dame up out of Class S? Because I understand they're a private school, but they're too good to be playing in that class right now.
Yeah, it's tough when they face a team in the final like Coventry that's a small town. All the guys that have been playing together forever since T-ball. You have that whole narrative where a Notre Dame team is, you got kids probably from Fairfield, from Bridgeport, Monroe, maybe Trumbull. You got kids from everywhere that play on that team. Yeah, and Stratford, and good for them. They won it, Class S. They're not the only school of choice that's in there. There's quite a few with St. Paul and Holy Cross, some of those NVL teams. But they lost 6 games in the regular season, 7 total because they got knocked out in the SWC semifinals. So I had them actually a notch lower. I voted them 10 in my poll, so I differed a little bit from the rest of the writers. But if you win a state championship, I'm going to put you in the top 10 somewhere. But I just didn't see, again, they won Class S where they were facing a lot of small town schools like that, and I just felt that they didn't deserve to be any higher than that.
I agree that you absolutely, if you win a state championship, and we just said this in the last block about lacrosse, like St. Joe's winning Class S should have been, Class M should have been over Staples in that 10th spot. But you're right, Notre Dame of Fairfield winning in Class S just doesn't seem as gratifying as someone like Seymour or Wethersfield winning Class M or Class L. So.
No, Notre Dame does a good job every year, but again, you look at Class S, the majority of the time, those schools of choice are going to be there in the final weekend there, and it just happened to be them this year. I know they do a good job. It's not a huge school enrollment-wise, but again, 7 losses overall. They didn't win their conference tournament.
Yep.
I couldn't get them any higher than 10 personally.
I agree with that. Mike, great job. Thanks for taking time with us, man. Appreciate it. We'll have you back on tomorrow or Thursday when those softball rankings come out.
I'll be here.
All right. We're going to take another break on Nutmeg Sports. When we get back, Kevin and I will wrap up today, as it is a Tuesday episode on the HAN Network.
Well, there's still a bite out on the water. Most anglers have decided to stow the gear for the winter. Just because Mother Nature isn't cooperating doesn't mean you can't see the latest models of all your favorite gear. With 2 convenient locations, it couldn't be easier to get your fix of summer. Boater, beach bum, fisherman, or simply love the New England coast, this is a unique place to shop. The Dock Shop, 51 Tokenique Road, Darien, 609 Riverside Avenue, Westport, or on the web, dockshop.com.
If you've ever thought about owning a motor coach or learning about what it's like to travel the open road in superior style and comfort, then contact Dave's RV Center in Danbury, Connecticut. Offering the best quality Class A motorhomes from Newmar, travel trailers and fifth wheel lines from Surveyor, and a toy hauler line from Work and Play. Choose from Newmar's Gas Line, Baystar and Canyon Star, or from Newmar's Diesel Line, Ventana and Dutch Star. And with unparalleled service and maintenance, Dave's RV is committed to keeping you and your motor coach safely on the road and enjoying it to the fullest. Stop by their showroom, 2 Industrial Plaza Road, Danbury, Connecticut, or call 877-483-3866.
Want a new experience in car buying? Scap Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. We are Connecticut's Wrangler headquarters. Come visit our new Ram Truck Center. Our Ram trucks get the job done with unparalleled style and performance. Call, click, or stop in to find the new Jeep, Chrysler Dodge car, minivan, or Ram truck that you've been looking for. Family owned and operated for over 50 years. Save thousands right now at the Jeep Celebration event and Chrysler Pacifica Incredible Sales event. Now through June 30th.
Dr. Stephen Molinaro and Peter Healy of Family Practice Dentistry and Laser Dental Care have served Ridgefield for over 22 years. Experienced staff offer gentle drillless techniques, preventative care, and cosmetic procedures in a relaxed environment. Grateful for the community's trust and support through the years, new patients and their families are welcome. Call today. Dr. Steve.
Back on Nutmeg Sports on the HAN Network. I just want to quickly wish the best of luck to Theo Humphrey of Greenwich and Cameron Wilson of New Canaan. They'll be playing in this year's U.S. Open at Shinnecock Hills. Humphrey will be teeing off at 12:41 on the back, and Wilson going off at 2:31 on the front on Thursday. We'll talk more about that later in the week, but did want to bring that up. Pretty cool. We've got 2 local guys competing for our national championship there.
Oh, that's awesome. That's going to be a great weekend out there in the Hamptons. It's going to be a sweet, sweet weekend for some golf here in our neck of the woods a little bit. It's going to be fun.
It's one of the oldest courses in America and golf's greatest test. I do want to take a minute here before we finish up the Rudin Report and Dave Rudin, his podcast. They've been focused on some of the parental issues that have gone on around Fairfield County. In part 3, his most recent part, he interviewed head coach of the Darien girls lacrosse team, Lisa Lindley. We're both big fans of Coach Lindley. She coached my sister Catherine during the summer for the Connecticut Grizzlies. Has been absolutely great, and I have a lot of respect for a coach in her position with the weight that she carries and what she says and how she kind of went off on what's really going on. And we heard Steve Phillips earlier with the podcast on the first episode. Doug Marchetti, the athletic director for Norwalk, was on there. But then hearing a coach talk about the parents she has to deal with and some of the issues that are mounted over players not being named an All-American or to the Under Armour game or to All-FCAC, it's mind-boggling. And in the back of my mind now, I'm wondering is there something we don't know about John Wiseman stepping down at Wilton? So I'm just interested to get your thoughts on what you felt after that Coach Lindley interview.
I respect her so much for what she said too, and I think it's absolutely ridiculous that parents have to write a letter to a coach to express their disappointment. And we're getting to a point now where in some cases, especially at the high school level, where student athletes feel that their personal goals are better than the team goals. And I think that's extremely disappointing. I think you look at Coach Lindley, and she preaches, teamwork, and everyone comes together as a team. And yeah, the personal accolades are great, being an All-American, being Under Armour All-American. All that is great, but at the end of the day, you have to focus on making sure that as a team, you come together and go for that one goal. And I think that one goal was to win FCX and win states. And it's disappointing that there are individual players that didn't feel like their personal goals were, to me, it seems like it's just a little bit of an ego situation there at Darien, which is disappointing.
And you just sort of wonder, is it maybe you just won your 7th consecutive FCX championship, you were looking for a 6th straight state championship. Is it a little bit of just being spoiled and underappreciating the challenge it is and what it means to win a state championship? Because, here's a great example. Everyone has been following along with Alex Ovechkin and his Stanley Cup party now. As he's found every different way possible to drink out of the Stanley Cup with every different beverage. And you're looking at someone who, for 13 years, suffered every possible agony and finally has, the pinnacle of his sport in his hands, and he's choosing to embrace it in any way possible. Mm-hmm. This is the greatest moment. Look at the Ridgefield boys lacrosse team upsetting Darien, the New Canaan girls lacrosse team winning a state championship. These are programs that hadn't always been there, and you can see that jubilation. Is Darien, you're right, is it the consistent success, sort of marring what that accomplishment is, and is that shining light onto individual accolades?
Right, and that's what it seems like, and that's what's really disappointing is that now parents are getting involved, and that's the one thing where it just getting to a point now where it wasn't really an issue when you and I were playing, where parents weren't really getting involved, and now you're just starting to see where parents are starting to write letters, they're starting to talk to athletic directors, trying to get coaches fired, and you're starting to see some of that a little bit, and it's really disappointing, especially here in this conference where you have a slew of terrific coaches at all these different sport levels, freshman, JV, and varsity. And it's really disappointing to see that now it's coming to a point where you're now more worried about what your son or daughter is doing rather than the team goal.
And it's, you talk about having these great coaches in the conference. It's interesting how the most decorated coach in the history of Connecticut lacrosse and Connecticut girls lacrosse is dealing with this nonsense.
Yeah.
And that's, no other way around it. It is nonsense. And you're right, it's unfortunate. I wouldn't say it didn't exist when we were playing, because I think it did, but I don't believe that parents had as much of an impact as they do now. And it's a lot of everything being on display through some of the social media aspects, but it is getting to a very dangerous point where, you look at, there are going to be certain coaching positions people are not going to want to touch.
Yeah.
And that's just the only way around it. So we'll keep an eye on that. You can find those podcasts on the Rudin Report at RudinReport.com. It was great work by Dave, and I would recommend a listen there. We are done for today. Great job by Mike Suppy. Thanks again for coming on. Good work by Kevin. Follow us the rest of the week at 2 o'clock. Our HAN interns are going to be joining us, talk about some of their favorite memories from fall, winter, spring, the entire 2017-2018 sports year. For Kevin, I'm Frank. We'll see you next time.